Walt Disney once famously said, I heard there's a recession coming. I've decided not to participate. My God, mind blown. As small business owners, especially in the tech space, we have an opportunity to make a decision. Are we going to participate in recession or simply not? In fact, I invite you to reframe a recession into a progression. I think we are about to undertake a great progression. The opportunity exists for your business. I've studied every recession back to the Great Depression of 1929, and I've been looking at patterns, and there's a consistent pattern that exists. When you know it, you can see the opportunities for extraordinary progression in your business. Now, let me show you. I have a little slide here. I go old school. I like to do an overhead. Here's my little overhead presentation, and we're going to go through this in detail. But all of recessions over the last 13 or 14 we've had so far always follow this pattern for small business. And there's certain stages. We often start off with shock or fear, on a mass scale. It's a mass psychological phenomenon and desperation. And as we see this, we see business decline and increases. Don't pay much mind to this just yet. We're going to go into detail in just a minute over this. But I do want to share that there's a common trigger that starts off these recessions. Back in 1929 was the Great Depression, extended for about 10 years. And there was already a destabilized economy. Business was struggling under the surface, but no one really noticed because it was booming times. Then there was a trigger event. The US moved away from the gold standard for the dollar. That caused Wall Street to drop, and then that triggered the Great Depression. The economy was already destabilized, but that was the event. Well, fast forward to more modern times in the 70s, when I was around, I remember my mother driving up to a gas station and waiting in these queues that were what seemed like a mile long, but it could only be on a Tuesday or a Thursday because she had an odd license plate. If you were around back then, maybe you remember those times. There was a destabilized economy, and then there was a trigger event, which was the OPEC oil crisis that caused the economy to go into immediate slump because of a mass psychological perception, and business slowed down. And if we move to even more current times, in the 2000s, destabilized economy, on comes the dot-com bust or bubble. We also have a housing collapse, and the economy just goes down. And we saw again in 2008, that was another housing collapse, right? The mortgage financing and so forth. And in 2020, we had a minor recession when the COVID pandemic happened. Now we have a destabilized economy, extremely high inflationary rates, also coupled by a unique situation where almost everyone that's employable is employed. So it's hard to find employees right now. And perhaps the trigger event is the Ukraine-Russian war, which is causing economic stress in Europe substantially, and it's coming across the entire globe now. That is a common phenomenon, and businesses respond in a common way. But you and I can choose simply not to participate. A little bit about my background. I was an IT guy back when we called ourselves VARs. So this is back in the mid-90s. I was a value-added reseller installing Novell networks. So I installed NetWare 2.2 with the VAPs, subsequently 3.12 with the NLMs. I was a CNA, never became a CNE. We were cutting edge when we rolled out a Windows NT system, just to give you a sense of how old that business was. And I remember too, the biggest danger of a network collapse back then wasn't cybercrime. It was if your foot tripped over the coaxial cable on a token ring network and the entire network collapsed. Well, regardless of what business you are in today and how it's evolved, there's an opportunity as a small business to navigate a recession into a progression and make it your biggest opportunity. And something I experienced personally back in the day, and you can experience today, is what's called a upstream look. Here's what happens. When a recession comes around, most businesses respond with a predictable pattern. That's that slide I showed you, and we're going to dig in together on that in a minute. Most will shut down the business. Most will slow down. Most will go into what's called loss aversion or a downstream look. Now, I can't give you the exact percentage, but say on average, everyone loses about 10 to 15%. We'll say 10% for now of their clients during a recession. Why? Because those people feel pressure. They have to cut costs. And so they look at certain things and say, you know what? I don't really need that. In fact, A lot of people during a recession use this as a subconscious excuse not to use a service. I was a member of a gym during a recession, and I wasn't going, but I would always tell myself, I really should go. Well, then when the last recession came in 2020, COVID, I said, well, there's a pandemic and things are getting a little bit tight. I'm not going to go to the gym anymore. I canceled my membership. I was always on the fence. Should I stay or should I go? Just like the song, should I stay or should I go? And I decided to go because now I had a justification. You will see that for your collective competition and perhaps yourself, a portion of customers will leave because they've always been on the fence. Now, here's the mistake that most businesses make. They do a downstream look. What that is we see 10% of our clients leave. Maybe, for example, I have 100 active clients. I see 10 leave, that's 10% of my clients. What do? I try to retain them. I say, hey, can we renegotiate the rates? Maybe we can give you more favorable terms. What can we do to keep you staying with us? But here's what the opportunity is. I am not saying don't make a concentrated effort to retain clients, but I'm not saying that's where the opportunity resides. Everyone is going to do a downstream look. What I invite you to do is to do an upstream look. What is that? Well, your collective competition, let's say they have 100,000 clients, the big companies and the small all together, and they collectively will lose their 10%. That's 10,000 clients. You're losing 10 clients, but coming into the stream is 10,000 new prospects. Those are the people who said, you know what? I was never really satisfied with that other company. I think it's time I just cancel that service. I don't know if I really need it. A percentage of them, maybe 20, 30, I don't know what the number is, but a percentage are using it as a subconscious justification to leave, but they still need the service. So there's 10,000 customers coming, a portion who immediately are looking to buy again, and another portion that are looking to buy in some future point. All those opportunities. Your opportunity is to reorient yourself and look upstream. What is your competition doing? Who are they losing? And who can you gain as a result? I'll give you a quick tip here. Something you should do right now. Hop on Google and use Google Alerts and type in every one of your competitors as an alert notification. If you see your competition doing some fire sale equivalents where they're trying to do some kind of promotions to gain more clients or to enhance their cash flow, it's usually a trigger that they are struggling and now they're going into a desperation of just trying to get cash right now. That means they're going to be losing some customers. Maybe you'll see lots of M&A activity. And I've had the fortune of selling a couple of my businesses, and often those are chunky and clunky transactions. During that period, customers also leave. You see heightened M&A happening during recessions, and that means more churn, more customers entering the market. So set Google Alerts to look at your competition for M&A. Target those customers when that is happening. Hop on LinkedIn and search and link to all of your competition's key leaders and just watch their patterns. Are they leaving? Are they going elsewhere? That's an opportunity too. It's a signal that new customers are going to be entering the market. Actively look upstream, cater and market to that market, grab opportunity. Let's go into this chart that I wrote or draw it out for you so you can see the pattern we go through. What I want to do in our time together is I'm going to share with you just a couple strategies. I think maybe we can get 3, maybe 4 done of how to leverage this. But first, we have to know the pattern we're going to go through. We already talked about this first stage, and I realize the print's a little bit small, so I'll read this off to you. It says stage 1, shock. That's the first stage of how businesses respond to crisis, particularly a recession. And there's a couple elements that typically happen. Businesses are startled and they go into a freeze up. Hopefully you've never been in an automobile accident or something other kind of shocking event, but I know some of us watching right now have been. And here's what happens. There is a collision. Everything feels hunky-dory right before it happens, and there's an impact. Sadly, some people get severely injured or worse in a car accident, but there's this phenomena that some people walk out of the accident with broken bones, severe injury, and don't feel a thing for an hour or 2, or maybe even a day, because our mind becomes overstimulated. There's all this input going on. What just happened? Is what's going on with everyone else? What happened to me? And the mind is overstimulated. Therefore, it can't even consider the broken bone in my arm, for example, until later. When all those inputs slow down, then there's consideration, and then I feel the pain. There is a mass psychological phenomenon that happens when a recession comes through the economy, people freeze up. We replicate other people's behavior and say the best thing to do is nothing, which it's not. But that's how people respond. We simply freeze up. Remember the COVID pandemic? I don't know how many restaurants you have in your neighborhood. We have about 20 here in my little town in northern New Jersey. And when it happened, all the restaurants just froze up. They couldn't serve to their constituency, their patrons at their restaurant, but they also said, let's not do takeout, let's do nothing, let's wait this out. That is a common response, is it's best just to wait and see what happens. And rarely is that the case. When that happens, we found in my research that you will find somewhere between 20, even 30% of businesses that go in the shock state do nothing. They have been on the verge of collapse. They've been surviving check by check. And by doing nothing, they destroy their cash flow. The inaction results in going out of business. That's not necessarily a good thing for them. It is a healthy thing for the economy. It's kind of like a fire going through the forest. There's certain dead wood that needs to be cleared out so new growth can happen. And that's a little bit of a draconian type of analogy, but the reality is there's some businesses that shouldn't be in the business in the first place. They just happen to sustain because the economy is carrying them along. During recession, those businesses go out of business. Then we go into the desperation stage. That's stage 2. These are the businesses that survive the freeze up, but then they respond with total overreaction. They have a stampede effect, and we see another 10, maybe 20% of businesses go out of business here because they're taking the big wrong actions. Remember the COVID pandemic? It's such a good example because it was so recent. Some dude somewhere was at like a Walmart or something, and the news comes out that there's going to be these quarantines, these self-assigned quarantines that were shutting down restaurants and so forth. And the guy had just bought some toilet paper for the day. He's like, okay. And he looks up and he's like, you know what? I'm going to buy a little more toilet paper. Someone else saw that and said, there's a pandemic and this dude's buying toilet paper. I should get some toilet paper too. And they bought some toilet paper, and other people observed that, and this stampede kicks in. Oh my gosh, there's a run on toilet paper at this Walmart. After the last roll goes, that's when the phone calls happen. There's no toilet paper at Walmart. You better get some. And the word spreads so quickly, so virally, it hits the news, and there's no toilet paper anywhere. Did you need that many rolls? No. There's that dude who bought all that toilet paper. It's probably still in his garage today, rotting away. But the stampede effect happens on. We just start replicating other people's behavior. We're running from the fear all in the same direction. Your opportunity is to go in a different direction. And then we move on to the evaluation phase. This is where we've had a clearing of somewhere between 30 up to 50% of our competition may disappear or be so compromised that they're no longer considered competition at this phase. That puts us into the evaluation phase. The evaluation stage is where we have consideration or stagnation. Some businesses will say, what can I do now? Others will say, I'm not going to do anything. And the ones that say, I'm not going to do anything, that finishes out the clearing of the market. And that's another 20, 10, sometimes 15% of businesses. So collectively, we will see maybe 40 to 65% of competition fade away during this period. That's when the resurgence starts taking off. We have deliberate action and surge. I'll explain that in a second. I want to share with you a couple specific strategies to navigate this, but want to show you an interesting phenomenon that happens specifically during a supply and demand shift. So we were talking about in this graphic I had here, how small business reacts, but I want to show you the relationship between supply and demand. So this is demand. This is the degree, so high demand to low demand over time, okay? And then what happens is, let me use a different color marker here for us, is demand is at a certain state. So we'll say it's running around here. But what happens is then supply runs in parallel to it. So this is pre-recession. Then there's that trigger event. Maybe it's the Iraq war, the Ukraine war with Russia. And that becomes this trigger event. And then we see stock market respond and so forth. There's great decline, crypto's crashing and all that stuff. And then very quickly, demand hits a new level, normalizes relatively quickly, but we see this instant drop called the cliff. What's interesting is supply doesn't react at the same same speed. Supply continues on, and now supply starts saying, oh my gosh, I'm not getting the customers I wanted, and people start fading away. This is where we start seeing the shock, desperation, and businesses start falling. This doesn't happen instantly. This happens over months, perhaps even in certain cases over years. So supply responds very slowly, this decline, like this. Then at a certain point, demand resurges, usually in every case I saw, to a level above and beyond where it was. This phase, the surge and burst. And supply is on a decline, businesses are crippled, and it continues down. At a certain point, it crosses over. Then supply starts recovering, and then supply starts responding, but also at a very slow rate. Here's the thing. This area right here, this gap here, becomes an opportunity for what we call a surge or burst. If you are prepared for this, you can grab this opportunity. There is high demand with low supply. It's the best position to be in. This is where you can gobble up opportunity. Most small businesses are not prepared for this, but we're going to make sure in the session you are. Most small businesses say, gosh, I've made it through the recession, let the business come, and then business comes, but they don't have the systems in place. They don't have the people in place. They can't scale, and therefore very quickly get overwhelmed, and they're stagnated because they have too much demand and they don't have enough preparedness to handle it. And we are not going to be in that position. We're going to ensure that when demand skyrockets, that you're in the position to gobble up that opportunity. That's why this isn't a recession. You can choose for this to be the progression of your business, the biggest opportunity it's ever faced. So how are we going to navigate it? Well, first, let's talk about these 3 stages. I can't tell you how long it lasts. In my research, these stages typically average between 6 months to maybe 8 months to a year. Typical recession lasts about 18 months, but Great Depression lasts about 10 years. There's been the shortest recession, I think, was the COVID pandemic from my research. That was affecting businesses for a very short period of time. Also, important thing to note, when a recession happens, generally the first community affected is large business. So you and I, we lose our 10% as small businesses. The SBA defines a small business by a company that does $25 million in annual revenue or less. So we see this decline in big business first. They lose their 10%, so they lose that 10,000 customers. We lose our 10. They feel the impact right away. That's a massive number, massive volume. So what they do is they cut spending. Who do they cut it with? Their vendors. And who are their vendors? Mostly the mid-tier companies. So within the first 3 months or so, big business starts cutting its expenses. They often do budgets every quarter, and now the mid-tier businesses are affected. What do? They have to cut their expenses. They have less income coming in, and who are they buying from? Me and you. You generally are serving businesses, for most of us, not in all cases, that are bigger than us, but not the mega players. That's not always the case, but that's the overall case. So there's this 3-month lag from big to medium. There's a 3-month lag from medium to small. So we feel the impact of a recession typically 6 months after it's declared. 6 months after it's declared. So if you haven't felt the recession yet, it may still be coming, particularly if the vendors that you are being fed or served by and are buying from you, ultimately your customers, if they are starting to feel it, we will ultimately feel it on a laggard effect, which is great news. We have an indicator of what's coming our way and we can prepare for it. Now, there is a downside. The recovery typically happens with large business first. They get the consumer demand recurring. They start building up again, which then loosens their budgeting belt. 3 months later or so, they start spending with medium-sized businesses. It takes 3 months for it to flush through their system. And then 3 months later, so 6 cumulatively, we start to feel the benefit and we start to grow. So there's this laggard effect, but we got to be prepared for this opportunity. So what do we do in these first 3 stages? I want to give you 2 tools that we're going to use. The first one, and this is something I'm going to draw out, like it's a 10-10-10 method. This is a way to measure how we respond to shock, desperation, and the evaluation phases to ensure we're making good decisions. Now, this is a tool that I did not develop. It was developed, as far as I know, by an author named Susie Welch. She was married to Jack Welch of fabled GE. And she developed this method to navigate any kind of considerations. It's a great business tool. So I want to give you a flavor of it. What I want you to do on a piece of paper, if you're following along with me, is to draw 3 columns like this. Maybe actually we'll even add a 4th column right here, kind of on the front. And what each one represents is a different 10. On the first column here, so we are going to get a 4-columner. I put the word consideration. This is whatever we're considering. And then we're going to frame it into these different 10s. Now, what most people do when we're under that pressure of desperation or we need to move very quickly, we have tunnel vision. I know you heard that term. We look only at what is in front of us, but we don't have a broader consideration. Maybe you're thinking, you know what, I may have to let someone go. And that's daunting. And what's the immediate impact? Well, we're in a little bit of financial difficulty, but this person's been so loyal to me. They're an extraordinary employee. I really actually adore them and respect them. I can't let them go. Let's push this a little bit longer. And you've heard this story before. Maybe you've experienced it. Some business owners, and myself included, save a few people because it's the right integral thing to do, but we lose the business and therefore everyone loses the opportunity to work because I've lost the business because I made a short-term decision without really consideration for long-term. Well, the 10-10-10 rule or method flips this. The first 10 stands for 10 hours. The next 10 stands for the next 10 months. The last 10 stands for the next 10 years. What we do with this tool, and I would do this on paper, any consideration you're making, put it on a piece of paper and say, do I let Mike, that's me, go, right? And then I say, well, how am I gonna feel about this next 10 hours? Well, it's a bad move. Mike's gonna be angry. There's gonna be anger. Mike's been loyal and a good worker. So he doesn't deserve it. So there's gonna be perhaps even retaliation. You know, he may go to a competitor, may pick him up. There's going to be serious loss. But then what we have to look is the next frame. What's going to happen in the next 10 months? Well, in the next 10 months, we're going to fiscally recover, right? So we're going to be in a better financial position because Mike is making a big salary that I can't afford anymore. So I'll be fiscally recovered. Mike may get his dream job. You know, the better job for him. My team will be better supported because I have the funds to pay them and I'm not in a desperation mode. I may have confidence back. And then we ask ourselves, well, what about the long term? What do we see happening if we make this hard decision? How I feel 10 years from today? In this case, I'll feel that I want to sell the company. So maybe I can sell company. It's going to have strong financials still because I'm making hard decisions. Mike may come back. You know, our friendship may continue. Mike may have a better career path because the career path here is going to come to an end by hook or crook anyway. The lesson here, again, is when we are in a position of moving quickly and there's desperation around us, we often revert to just what we see immediately in front of us and make poor decisions for the long-term outlook of the business. What I see here is negative emotion and consequence, but in the next 2 columns, I see positive, and then my decision is, I gotta make the hard decision. I am now looking at all the blocks. And sometimes it doesn't play out this way, it may flip. Sometimes the decision to keep someone or let someone go feels good in the moment, but the long-term consequence flips. And sometimes they all point in one direction or all in the other direction. But until we put it in frames where we can look at different sections of the future, we're going to play deference or priority in just the immediate. There's a saying, desperate people do desperate things. The 10-10-10 method, I found, is the greatest tool that you and I can use to navigate a progression, because we can make smart decisions even when we got to make rapid fire decisions. I'll show you another tool. This one's around, let's go back to this slide. This is, of course, how you respond, but also your client base, be it B2C or B2B, goes through these stages too. I found there's one interesting dynamic that always happens. And what that dynamic is how people manage money. And I want to give you a tool to manage this, because cash flow is king for your business in any circumstances, progression or otherwise. And we need to be ready to manage that. So let's dig into this. Readjust my slide here. I'm going to show you what's called the buyer lender matrix. Here's the tool. And this tool is a powerful way to understand the emotional dynamics of obligation. I'm going to draw this out. This is just a little slide. I wanted to show you where it's prepared, but let's go back to that piece of paper. Please join me on this one. So here's how it works. This is a graph around time, and this is what's called obligation. And there's an interesting phenomenon that happens. Over time, the sense or the obligation that a borrower has actually decreases. And over time, the obligation a lender has back to the borrower, the expectation of obligation, increases. So this is lender. Gosh, my handwriting is about as good as a doctor's, probably worse. So this is how it works. I'll give you an example. I had a client who engaged me as a coach to them, who was in the tech space. They were actually doing technology development. They were basically a coding firm, and they developed some software for this company. It wasn't during a recession, but that was irrelevant. What happened was they developed this software and they had a bill out to their client for the tune of, like, I think it was $50,000. And this was now a year past. They had been calling the company saying, please pay us. And the company says, we know we owe you. We don't have the money now. And they weren't paying. Now, understand this. Over time, say you and I decide to do something. I need some money. I'm heading out to dinner with a friend of mine, and I realize, oh my gosh, I don't have any money on me. You and I know each other and say, hey, can I borrow $100? And you have $100 on you. You say, yeah, no problem, Mike. In that moment, me as the borrower, my obligation back to you is very high. You'll see gratitude, like, oh, thanks so much. You hooked me up. I owe you. You as the lender, your sense of obligation or expectation from me is very low. No problem, Mike. Happy I could help you out. Just pay me back as soon as you can. Oh, absolutely. I'll pay you immediately. That sensation is right in the beginning. You gave me money. Your expectation of me is very low. I borrowed money from you. My expectation is very high to pay you back. That's the emotional state. But now time starts moving forward. And here's what happens. Next day, you go, hey, how was that dinner? I said, it was great. It's awesome. Thanks so much again for hooking me up. They go, oh, no problem. When are you going to pay me back? Oh, I'll get to you next couple of days. No problem. Oh, great. Thanks. Now, a couple of days pass by. I don't give you any money. You don't even hear a peep from me. And you're like, hey, you can pay me back? The emotion I feel is, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll pay you back. I'm good for my word. Stop pushing me on this. So my sense of obligation starts declining. Then more time passes by and you're like, dude, Mike, am I going to get my money? This is a month later now. I'm like, my God, it was $100. I mean, I'll get it to you at some point, but gosh, leave me alone. What's your problem? My sense of obligation back to you actually declines. It was no big deal for you to give me money. Why are you hassling me? I'll get to it when I can. Your sense of expected obligation for me is increasing. This guy, he ripped me off. He said, get to me in a day. It's a month later. This guy's a schmuck. So the danger here is this crossover. The moment that the borrower's obligation decreases emotionally, the lender's in trouble, and the lender has higher expectations. This is often the area we say, well, we're going to collections and there's this combative mode. Our job is to keep the borrower in this state. So back to that story. So I have this client who owed $50,000. And they're like, we got to go to collections, right? They're well past this window. I said, well, before we do that, let's try one more technique, a way of heightening obligation. And this is what I did. I called the client and said, I know you owe us $50,000. I know you know that. And I know as times are tough for you. I'd like to see if you could start paying us back an installment every week of some amount. Could you do that? And they're like, well, how much? No. I said, well, could you pay a penny? And they're like, a penny? Yeah, we'll send you a penny a week. I said, We could, of course, do that. I say, well, could you send $1 a week? And like, yeah. I said, and we kept on discussing it. I said, what's a reasonable number that doesn't hurt you? They said, we can pay $500 a week. That's a no-brainer. I said, great. That's our new terms. Please start paying $500 a week every Monday morning. I expect that check. What I did in that simple moment is I pushed back. I negotiated new terms, if you will, new terms, and said, you now owe me $500 every week. It reset the sense of obligation. Here's what happened. They wrote a check for $500 on Monday. I said, when we got, I said, immediately said, hey, thanks, got the $500. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to that check next Monday. Again, giving that obligation. Next Monday, $500. Same thing, thank you. Within a few weeks of that, there was a check that came through for, I think it was $2,000 or $3,000. Called him immediately and said, hey, thank you for paying back faster. We appreciate that. And I said, yeah, no problem. We had a big check come in. We remembered that we owe you and we want to get this obligation done. Oh, when they said that word obligation, it's like, oh, we got them now. We're back to that psychology of they have heightened obligation. And we kept that going. At $500 a week, I would make what, $25,000 over a year. I got the full $50,000 back in 8 months because we heightened the obligation. That is the lesson I want you to learn. As we go through this, remember, your clients are navigating this too. They may go into this shock phase and just freeze up, not paying vendors. They may start doing desperate things. I want you heightening their obligation using this technique so that we keep your cash flow going, so we can facilitate your great progression. Now, let's continue on. Hope it's cool with you. I'm kind of racing through this. Part of it is I'm from New Jersey. I talk quickly. Secondly, we got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's go. All right, now I'm going to talk about the great opportunity in front of you. The deliberate action stage and the surge stage. I want to give you a couple tools here that are going to move you on. As a reminder, oh, I may have lost the graphic here that I hand drew for you, but that's okay. As a reminder, demand goes through a rapid decline and a rapid recovery, usually a higher level. Supply, on the other hand, goes through very slow response. And it's this gap period here, whereas deliberate action and surge, we got to position you to leverage this. There's 2 ways of doing this. One of the deliberate actions I want you to take is using a technique called the Pareto overlap. Now, I suspect you may not be too familiar with the Pareto overlap. And if you are, I'm kind of surprised because I made up that term. But it is based upon the Pareto principle, and there's an opportunity within. So here's how it works. Basically, it's 2 columns. Now, the Pareto principle is the 80-20 rule. Vilfredo Pareto is the creator of this concept. Basically, what he observed is that in most environments, 20% of a community facilitates 80% of the benefit, if you will. He was actually studying the Italian economy and saw that 20% of the population had 80% of the wealth. Conversely, 80% of the population only maintained 20% of the nation's wealth. He noticed in nature too, that 20% of his pea pods were yielding 80% of the peas. And the other plants, 80% were not yielding that much. In fact, it's probably happening right now. I can't see, but if you look at the clothing you're wearing, out of your entire wardrobe of clothing, you probably are wearing some of your favorite clothes right now, because 80% of the time we wear only 20% of our wardrobe. That's the 80-20 rule. But we can deploy this in our business, particularly during a great progression. Here's how we do it. I want you to analyze 2 things. This one is your clients, existing clients, and this one is your services or your products. It's your offer. And we're going to deploy the Pareto principle. 20% of your clients are the great clients. They are yielding likely 80% of your revenue. Conversely, 20% of your clients are yielding probably no revenue or very little for you. And then we have the 60% in the middle. So that's a common breakup. You look at your offering, it's usually the same, that 20% of your services yield 80% of your profitability. This is where your profitability resides. 60% generally yielding the difference. And actually, you probably have some stuff that's actually costing you to have. Like, you deliver a service that costs you to deliver that service. These are those one offers. Those are the ones where you can't go to sleep at night because you're worried, how are we going to get this done? It's so frustrating. We struggle to do this. These are the things you have to do over and over again because you're not doing it right the first go around. I would invite you to engage the services of an accounting professional, someone that specializes in profit. I'm not trying to be pluggy here. Our organization, we have profit first professionals. This is the analysis we do. So maybe your accountant can do it, or maybe you engage a service of a profit professional, but we want to look at this and do this evaluation. There are 4 common scenarios. There are a lot, actually more that play out here, but 4 that we need to leverage in a recession. Scenario 1, your best clients. These are clients who pay you on time. They love doing business with you. They are price agnostic. If you increase your prices, they see the value in you. That's not a big deal to them. They love your service. They brag about you, and you love them too. A percentage of those customers are buying your best stuff. This is where you make all of your margin. Your best customers buying your best stuff. This is the heart of your organization. You need to do everything you can to protect that during a great progression. Everything you can do to retain those customers. Amplify your communication to them. Show your gratitude for your services. Prioritize them so their service level is heightened during this time. Now, the nice thing is, it is the minority of your clients. It's just that small best client. Your heart. Protect your heart during a trauma. So, best clients buying best stuff, we protect them. Second, you'll have this scenario. Your worst clients. Now, listen, I'm not saying these are bad people. I'm simply saying they're a bad fit for your organization. They're not appreciative of what you do. They want you to do work over and over again. They're not a good fit. And so therefore, again, not necessarily bad people, not a good fit for your organization. Some of them are buying stuff that's not profitable. It's actually costing you money. Yes, we find often in our analysis that there's a percentage of clients, portion of these clients, they're buying the bad stuff that actually it costs you to have those people's clients. Don't protect them. Realize they are poison. And not the good poison, the band, which actually, ironically, is not good poison either. These are bad poison. If you keep swallowing it, it's compromising your company. Spit out poison. And honestly, let your competition swallow that stuff. During a great progression, we need to identify unfit clients buying non-profitable offerings and remove them. It's a small portion, but it is a costly portion to your business. That downstream look sometimes is a cleansing thing to let a portion or all of them go and let your competition swallow that. We're going to look upstream together. Okay, so spit out the poison, protect the heart. But there's 2 more scenarios we got to look at in this case. One is great clients buying unprofitable things. This is an education opportunity. Call those great clients, show your appreciation for them buying from you, but tell them what else you have to offer. That's got to be ethical. You don't want to introduce things to them that they don't need, but what could they benefit from you that they're not aware of? This is an education opportunity. The other situation is this: bad clients buying profitable things. This is hard conversation because this is such a trap. We have bad clients buying things that are making money. And if you're willing to keep selling to bad clients just because it makes you money, my God, that means they're taking advantage of you. It means you don't really care about the integrity of your business. You just care about the dollar. And I know that's not the case. So what we need to do is call these clients and say, hey, we appreciate you buying from us. We don't appreciate how you're buying from us. We have expectations too. You got to speak cordially to our people. You got to pay on time. Whatever the behavior is, you need to adjust and tell them you got to ship up or shape up, I should say, or ship out. It's a hard conversation. I'll tell you, a small portion of those clients may improve. A large portion of those clients, their behavior is their behavior. It's going to be tough for them to improve. Therefore, you're going to have to say goodbye, and your team is going to be grateful for it, that you had the courage to do it. This takeaway is so important. I want you to do this analysis in your business immediately. This analysis is now a deliberate action that prepares you for this growth. Now, one more thing we can do, and I call it the one-step back method. And let's see if I have the chart here in front of me. I'm going to draw it out on a piece of paper, but I do have a real simple chart that I had pre-designed for you. This chart is a way to reinvent our business as we need to. What was selling today may not sell tomorrow. So what do we sell? You can use a one-step back method to capture that surge. What's the new thing people want? So let me remove this and let's go on. I'll turn our sheet this way. Here's how it works. Draw boxes on a piece of paper. These represent the steps you take to create your final offering. Whatever your deliverable is your final offering. I'm going to use a restaurant as an example, but as an MSP, your final offering may be a secure network, a stable network, right? In a restaurant sample, the final thing is food on the table. Then what we ask ourselves is, to deliver this final offering, what must happen? What's the substantial step immediately prior that must happen? Well, we need to walk, food to table, deliver it to the table. MSP, the final product is a stable, secure network. Right prior to that may be an audit or analysis. What is that? Then we go back another step. Before we can walk food to the table, it needs to be cooked in kitchen, and then prior to that, what happens? The raw ingredients are purchased. Raw ingredients. What I want you to do is draw back every single significant step. It's more than 4 boxes. You may have 15, you may have 2 dozen. I don't know what the number is, but what is each step? Because those are steps that you are taking that may individually be opportunities to sell services. I like to use an example of a restaurant because when the COVID pandemic happened, I was engaged by some restaurants to navigate this. This is what we did. We first rewound their steps. We then looked at each step and said, could this be a new product? So food on table is the final deliverable, but they carry food to the table. Oh, that's an opportunity for carry out, right? A lot of businesses did that. The innovative ones said, I can amplify. So once you're doing something already, the question is, how do you amplify it to the next level? What we did is we teamed up with a food truck for this one restaurant, and they prepared 100 meals, kept them warm in the food truck. And then you could call this restaurant, and they could deliver on average in under 10 minutes, a hot or warm meal, ready to go, fully prepared. Where the competitors who were doing takeout said, it'll be ready in 45 minutes. Can you pick it up or we can deliver it in the next hour or 2? People had to wait an hour as opposed to 10 minutes because they took carry out to the next level. And they already were doing this. What happened the step before? Food is prepared in the kitchen. Forgot the letter N here, so we add that back in. So we teamed up with a restaurant. We said, well, you prepare food in the kitchen. How can we now monetize this? Well, you can't have customers coming in, but you do have that past patron list. Let's email them and say, we're going to teach a cooking class. And that's exactly what we did. We started teaching a cooking class. And now they're charging $200. They said, attend this 3-hour class or 2.5 hours, I think it was. Our cook, our head chef will be there. The business owner himself, they were the videographer. Now, instead of a staff of like 20 people, they were able to reduce their cost until they reopened their old business, but they were able to reduce their cost. They had just the cook, just the owner, and they were creating more revenue and more profitability by far by teaching cooking classes. The side benefit is past patrons were able to experience their favorite meals from that restaurant now at home, and they were connecting with the community. It was a great mechanism. And this company, this restaurant, still teaches cooking classes. And the beautiful thing is they already knew how to do it because they did the 1-step back method. And go back, raw ingredients, you could have a blue apron here where this was classes, you could become almost like a grocery store or the next blue apron where you're delivering meals. Some restaurants did that. The beautiful thing is in your business, you already have new solutions, new offerings where you can capture the opportunity coming your way. This phase right here, this surge, is contingent upon you taking deliberate actions, perhaps even reinventing yourself at this period, and then you can grab all this opportunity. It's all about preparation. If you do it now, you'll have a surge. I want to share one final thought with you before we wrap it up for today. I've been saying for a long time now, and even recently in the last few years, saying and parroting what others say, that small business is the backbone of the economy. Well, I've done some research, and sadly, that's not true. The data points to something totally different. Small business is not, admittedly, the backbone of the economy. Small business is the economy. Here's what my research identified: that every business started off at least small, or maybe as a small idea. Google started small, Apple started small. They all started as small business. Some elected to grab the opportunities out of recessions, because that's where Apple came from and Google. And you can look, the list goes on and grew explosively. They all started as small businesses, or at least a small idea that grew. Every business at some point was a small business, and some choose, rightfully so, to remain a small business. The opportunity is in front of you now. History has proven that small business is the most successful when they position themselves the right way in a recession by making it a progression. The great progression is upon us. I hope you leverage it, because our world economy is dependent on small business success, because it's all business. I wish you huge success in the progression. Thank you.